Ladies and gentlemen, there will be days, many in fact, when the weight of existence presses against your chest like a storm cloud that forgot how to rain. Your body is tired. Your soul is muted. The world moves on, but you feel paused in grief, confusion, or that inexplicable hollowness that needs no reason. And in those moments, happiness feels almost offensive. How dare joy knock on your door when your spirit hasn't cleaned the house? But I tell you this, not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. Force yourself to be happy, not for appearance, not to pretend, but to protect your spirit from decay. Because the truth is, if you wait for life to feel light in order to smile, you may never smile again. Joy isn't something that waits until conditions are perfect. Joy is what makes the conditions bearable. You must understand, emotions are not dictators. They are passing weather. And though the clouds are heavy today, you, yes, you, are the sky. So, force the smile, not to lie to yourself, but to realign yourself, not because it all makes sense, but because laughter is a thread that weaves together what has been torn apart. Happiness isn't always organic. Sometimes it's medicine. And like all medicine, it may taste bitter at first, but it heals. You may say, but I don't feel happy. Good. You're not supposed to feel it yet. You're supposed to choose it first. Then the feeling follows. You see, the world trains us to be reactive, wait for the promotion, the apology, the sunny day, then be happy. But this is like waiting to feel fit before going to the gym. Backwards, illogical, self-defeating. So instead, reverse it. Act as if you're joyful. Breathe as if you're at peace. Move as if the burden has already lifted, and watch, like smoke fading in sunlight, the heaviness begins to unravel. This isn't delusion. This is creative defiance. You are not faking it. You are reclaiming your power. And sometimes power doesn't look like strength. Sometimes it looks like choosing to dance while your heart is breaking. Sometimes it looks like planting seeds of laughter in dry soil, believing somehow flowers will still grow. You don't need life to be easy, to smile. You just need the courage to smile when it's hard, because that's when it counts. That's when the universe leans in and says, now you're learning. Force yourself to be happy. Not to deny the storm, but to remind it, you are not made of weather. You are made of something far more resilient. If you listen long enough, your heart will whisper this secret. Joy is not the reward for surviving, it's the weapon. And every time you wield it in the face of darkness, you win. So smile, even now, especially now, and see what shifts. Happiness is not a reward, it's a responsibility. That's the truth most people overlook in the whirlwind of life. We treat happiness as something we earn, something granted to us once the stars align. When the bills are paid, the body is healed, the relationship is mended, or the past is forgotten. But happiness was never meant to be a prize handed out for enduring enough suffering. It's a posture, a decision, a sacred responsibility we carry, especially when life feels unbearably heavy. When things go wrong, when the weight is too much to bear, that's exactly when we think we have a right to be sad. And yes, you do. You have every right to feel what you feel. Pain is real. Heartbreak is real. But the problem arises when we allow that pain to dictate our entire state of being. We begin to wear sadness like a second skin, and slowly it becomes our identity. That's why in those very moments, happiness must be chosen, not as a denial of pain, but as a radical act of personal power. Forcing happiness doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It doesn't mean smiling while you're drowning. It means understanding that while pain is inevitable, your response to it is your responsibility. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are the author of your experience. Life will write the events, yes, but you get to write your response. And if you wait for the world to change before you allow yourself to feel joy, then you're handing over your inner peace to forces outside your control. True happiness is an act of defiance against despair. It's the refusal to let darkness decide the tone of your spirit. It's standing up in the middle of emotional chaos and saying, I still choose light. I still choose laughter. I still choose life. And that choice isn't made once. It's made over and over again, sometimes minute by minute. You wake up and your chest feels heavy, but you take a deep breath and choose gratitude for simply breathing. You walk through the day and the world feels gray, but you notice a child's laughter, a warm drink, a tree swaying in the wind, and you decide to let it touch you. Not because you feel like it, but because you've trained yourself to look for joy even when it hides. That's what responsibility means. Not obligation, not duty in the traditional sense. It means you have the ability to respond, to shape your reality through your inner choices. And if you understand this, if you really absorb it, you become unshakable. Because now, no matter what happens outside of you, there is something sacred inside of you that cannot be moved. That part of you has decided, my happiness is mine to create. It is easy to be happy when things go well, but it is divine to be happy when they don't. And that is where transformation happens. You stop being a mere passenger in life. You become the driver, the alchemist who turns pain into power and grief into wisdom, hardship into growth. Happiness then is not the finish line, it's the compass. And when you walk with it, especially when the road is dark, for you'll find yourself discovering things no comfort zone could have ever revealed. So yes, force yourself to be happy. Not in a fake way, not in a shallow way, but in a conscious, soul-deep way that says, this life is mine, and I refuse to let it be colored only by what hurts. Let happiness be your protest, your quiet revolution, your declaration that even when life is heavy, your spirit chooses not to sink. You owe that to yourself. Not someday, not when it all feels better, but now. Always now. Forcing happiness is not fake. It's training your mind to choose a higher frequency. That's where most people get it wrong. They assume that if happiness doesn't come naturally, it must be artificial. That a smile during sadness is dishonest. But let's look deeper. When you go to the gym and push through resistance, is that fake strength? No, it's strength in the making. Likewise, when you choose to be joyful during a difficult moment, you're not faking anything. You're building emotional resilience. The mind is a creature of habit. It tends to follow the same loops, the same narratives, the same emotional patterns it has repeated over and over. When life gets hard, the mind is conditioned to spiral into hopelessness, fear, or self-pity. But like any well-worn path, the more you walk it, the deeper it becomes. And unless you consciously steer yourself away from that path, you keep walking into darkness out of pure familiarity. That's where forced happiness becomes your training ground. It's the mental equivalent of lifting weights when your muscles are sore. At first, it's uncomfortable, unnatural even. But repetition creates strength, and strength leads to transformation. But think of it this way. The brain doesn't know the difference between a deeply felt emotion and a repeatedly imagined one. When you smile, even if you don't feel like it, the act itself sends signals to the brain that say, we're okay, we're safe. Neurochemicals like dopamine and serotonin are released. Your physiology starts shifting. Your energy begins to move. That one decision to smile, to breathe more calmly, to soften your gaze, these are not acts of denial, but signals to the subconscious that you're choosing a different frequency, and that frequency matters more than you know. Everything in life responds to it. When you're on a low frequency, shame, anger, despair, you attract more thoughts and situations that match it. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because your inner state filters your perception of reality. You see only what you are prepared to see. So when you elevate your state, even artificially at first, you begin to open the door to new possibilities. The fog begins to lift. This isn't pretending that the pain doesn't exist. It's refusing to let the pain decide your direction. It's like standing in the rain and choosing to dance, not because you're not getting wet, but because you know there's still music inside you. You don't wait for joy to arrive, you initiate it. You become the signal, the transmitter. That's how frequency works. It responds to intention more than condition. So even when your life circumstances haven't yet caught up, your frequency can shift before your reality does. And over time, that shift becomes natural. What began as a conscious effort becomes your new normal. The same way a beginner trains their body to endure, you train your mind to lean into light, even when darkness surrounds you. This is not emotional dishonesty. It's emotional mastery. Anyone can collapse under the weight of sorrow. Anyone can surrender to chaos. But to sit in the middle of suffering and still find a reason to smile, that is a skill, a power, a decision made by the part of you that refuses to live on autopilot. You may not feel joyful every time you try, and that's okay. It's not about perfection. It's about direction. Even choosing a slightly better thought is progress. Even reaching for gratitude when bitterness wants to dominate is a victory. Forced happiness is not fake happiness. It's training wheels for the soul. It's your declaration that you're not waiting for life to bring joy. You're creating it, step by step, choice by choice. In the beginning it may feel mechanical, but keep going. Soon the effort will become ease. The resistance will become rhythm, and what was once forced will become familiar. And in that transformation, you will not only feel lighter, you will begin to attract a life that matches the joy you dared to choose, even when it made no sense to do so. You are not your emotions. You are the awareness watching them. This is one of the most liberating truths you can ever understand. Emotions are not who you are. They are experiences that move through you They rise like waves and fall again. But you, the ocean underneath, remain. When life feels heavy, we tend to say things like, I am sad, I am anxious, I am broken. But that language is misleading. You are not sadness. You are not anxiety. You are not brokenness. You are simply experiencing these emotions. There's a vast difference between having an emotion and being one. The former is temporary. The latter becomes a trap. It's easy to drown your feelings when you forget that there's a part of you that's always untouched, always observing. That deeper part of you doesn't panic, doesn't overreact, doesn't get stuck. It watches, it notices, and it waits for you to return home to it. Think of your emotions as weather patterns. Some days are clear and bright. Others are stormy, cold, unpredictable. But no matter how intense the storm, the sky is never destroyed by the weather. The sky remains, and you too are like that sky. Vast, still, unshaken at the core. When you start to notice your emotions rather than identify with them, everything begins to change. You feel sadness, and instead of saying, this is who I am, you say, sadness is here right now. That one shift in perspective gives you space. Space between the emotion and your sense of self. And in that space, healing begins. Awareness is the medicine. It allows you to experience pain without becoming it. It gives you the power to witness your anger, your grief, your fear, without letting it dictate your actions or define your worth. When life feels unbearable, don't run from the emotion. Don't suppress it. But also, don't build your identity around it. Sit with it like you would sit with a visitor. Observe it. Feel it. But remember, it's just passing through. There is strength in this kind of stillness, a silent power in being the watcher. When you are aware of your inner state, you gain control over it. Not in the sense of suppressing or avoiding, but in choosing not to let it consume you. You become the calm center in the middle of emotional chaos. This is what it truly means to force yourself to be happy. Not by denying what's happening inside you, but by remembering who you are beyond the noise. You are the witness, the space in which all thoughts, feelings, and sensations arise and pass. You don't chase after them. You don't cling to them. You let them come. You let them go. And as you rest more and more in this state of awareness, you realize that even in the darkest moments, you have access to peace. Because peace is not the absence of difficult emotions. Peace is the presence of perspective. You begin to see emotions as guides, not enemies. Sadness shows you what matters. Anger reveals what's been crossed. Fear teaches you where you've placed your faith. But none of these emotions are permanent. None of them are who you are. And knowing that makes you free. Free to feel without being defined, free to fall and rise again, free to smile even when you're hurting. Not out of denial, but out of wisdom. The next time life feels overwhelming, don't say, I am broken. Say, something inside me is hurting, and I am witnessing it with compassion. That simple change will transform your relationship with yourself. It will teach you to love even your most uncomfortable moments, because they no longer define you. They simply move through you. You are not the storm. You are the sky. Let the emotions come and go like passing clouds, but remain grounded in your awareness. That is where happiness lives. Not in pretending life is easy, but in remembering you are bigger than whatever you feel. Always. The heaviness of life is often temporary, but the habit of sadness becomes permanent if left unchecked. This is one of the silent truths about human nature. We become what we repeat, even when we don't mean to. Pain visits all of us, but it's our relationship with that pain that determines whether it lingers for a season or settles into our identity. When something goes wrong, a loss, a failure, a betrayal, it's natural to feel hurt. It's natural to grieve, to fall into silence, to withdraw from the world for a while. This is part of the healing process. But what happens next is what shapes the rest of your life. Do you pass through the sadness, or do you unpack and live inside it? You see, emotional pain has gravity. If you're not careful, it pulls you inward and downward until you stop remembering what lightness ever felt like. At first, it's unintentional. You feel low, so you skip the things that brought you joy. You stop talking to people who made you laugh. You stop talking to people who made you laugh. You avoid the morning sun, the walk in the park, the music that used to make your soul dance. You tell yourself it's just temporary. But then days become weeks. Weeks become months. And one day you wake up, not realizing that the sadness is no longer a guest. It's become your home. That's how emotional habits form, quietly, gradually, invisibly. And once they're formed, they start to feel like truth. You no longer say, I feel down, but instead this is just who I am now. But that's the trap. Just because sadness feels familiar doesn't mean it's your fate. This is where the power of forced happiness comes in, not as a performance, but as a pattern breaker. You interrupt the cycle. You decide, no, I will not let this temporary pain become my permanent state. You wake up and do something joyful, even when it feels unnatural. You call a friend even when you want to be alone. You dance even when your body resists, not because you're denying how you feel, but because you're refusing to let that feeling dictate the entire course of your life. The mind follows repetition. What you practice, you become. So if you practice sadness, even unintentionally, it will eventually own you. But if you practice happiness, even just small moments of it, you begin to rewire the very structure of your emotional world. And yes, it will be uncomfortable at first. The heaviness will resist you. It will whisper, this is pointless, you're still broken, nothing will change. That's exactly why you must press on, not with pressure, but with patience. You are teaching your soul to remember light after being in the dark for too long. Think of happiness as a seed. You don't see results the day you plant it, but you water it anyway. You keep showing up even when the soil looks dry. And one day that effort turns into a sprout, then a leaf, then a flower. This is how healing begins. Not with one big moment, but with small acts of joyful rebellion against the pull of sadness. It is not your fault if life hurts you, but it is your responsibility not to let that pain become your identity. Because the longer you stay in that emotional heaviness, the more natural it starts to feel. And the more natural it feels, the harder it becomes to leave. That's why acting against it, choosing happiness, even if it feels forced, is a sacred duty to yourself. You must remember, you are not meant to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders forever. Sadness may visit, but it is not your companion. It is a messenger, not a master. Its purpose is to show you what matters, not to imprison you in it. So choose joy, not because everything is fine, but because you are not willing to live in emotional exile. Choose to smile, to laugh, to move, to sing, to feel, even if your heart isn't ready. Because the heart heals through motion, through rhythm, through choice. And the sooner you interrupt the habit of sadness, the sooner you reclaim the light that still waits for you underneath all that heaviness. It was never gone, it was only hidden. And now with every joyful act you begin to uncover it again. Joy isn't always natural, but it is always possible. That's the paradox most people miss. We believe that joy must come effortlessly, that it should rise within us like a spring bubbling from the earth. And when it doesn't, we assume something is wrong. But in truth, joy is not always something that appears on its own. Sometimes it's something you must create, call forth, or consciously allow, especially in moments when it feels furthest from reach. There will be seasons in life when nothing seems to align. When you feel tired, misunderstood, disappointed, and unseen. In those seasons, waiting for joy to arrive naturally is like waiting for the sun to shine through a ceiling with no windows. You don't wait for joy. You build openings for it. You invite it in. Even if that means forcing yourself to laugh when your heart isn't in it, or dancing in your room when your soul feels heavy. It's not inauthentic to chase joy when it doesn't come easily. In fact, it's deeply honest. Because what you're really doing is choosing to remember something deeper than your current pain. You're remembering that within you there still exists a space, untouched by circumstances, a space where light still lives, even if dimmed. Joy doesn't have to be loud or perfect. It doesn't always arrive as bursts of laughter or wide smiles. Sometimes joy is quiet. It's the peace in your chest after a deep breath. It's a moment of silence where the mind softens. It's the brief spark of inspiration that flickers when everything else feels dull. And often, those small embers are enough to keep you going. But to access even those subtle forms of joy, you have to be open to them. You must be willing to act in the direction of happiness even if you don't feel like it. You drink water. You take a walk. You listen to music that once moved you. You light a candle at night. You say thank you even if you don't know what for. These acts may seem meaningless in the moment, but they are how you prepare the ground for joy to return. The idea that joy must be spontaneous is a myth. Everything meaningful in life, love, discipline, creativity, takes effort. Why would joy be any different? Like a flame, it needs fuel. And in your darkest times, you are the one who must gather that fuel, even if your hands are shaking. Now, this doesn't mean ignoring the pain. It means refusing to give it the final say. You can grieve and still laugh. You can be anxious and still find a moment of wonder. You can carry sorrow and still seek beauty. Joy and sadness are not enemies. They are companions on the journey. And often, it's your willingness to reach for one that helps you heal the other. There's something powerful about the person who creates their own light, who doesn't wait for circumstances to shift, who doesn't depend on others to lift their mood, who understands that happiness is not something to be found, it is something to be built. And yes, that takes effort, especially when life is heavy, especially when you feel disconnected. But effort is not the enemy. Resistance is. The longer you resist the possibility of joy, the more distant it feels. But the moment you make a move, even a small one, toward lightness, something inside begins to shift. Maybe not all at once, maybe not dramatically, but gradually, steadily. That's how joy returns. Not in a wave, but in a ripple. One moment at a time. One choice at a time. And it all starts with the realization that it's okay if it doesn't feel natural right away. That's not failure. That's the beginning. So don't wait. Don't sit in silence hoping joy will find you. Go and find it yourself. Paint, move, speak, create. Reach for beauty even if your hands are trembling. Smile even if it feels fragile. Choose to act like someone who still believes in joy. And watch how life begins to respond. Because joy is always possible. Not because life is always easy, but because you are always capable of choosing it. The universe responds to your vibration, not your vocabulary. You can speak the most positive words, recite affirmations, and say all the right things. But if your inner state, your energy, your vibration, is rooted in fear, doubt, or defeat, that is what life echoes back to you. Words may shape the surface, but vibration shapes the foundation. And the foundation is what determines everything. Your vibration is the emotional frequency you live in. It's how you feel when you wake up in the morning. It's the energy behind your thoughts, the tone behind your actions, the quiet hum of belief that pulses through you even when you say nothing. You might be telling yourself, I'm fine, but if your body feels heavy, your heart feels numb, and your spirit feels caged, that's the signal you're actually transmitting. That's what you're putting out. And the universe doesn't listen to what you say. It listens to what you are. That's why forcing happiness, even when it feels unnatural, matters so deeply. Because when you deliberately choose a lighter state, even if it starts off as an act, even if your mind resists, it begins to shift your energy. You can't fake vibration, but you can change it. You can reach for a better feeling, a higher thought, a more empowering action. And when you do that repeatedly, your inner world begins to tune itself to a different frequency. It's like tuning an instrument. If it's out of sync, no matter how beautiful the song, it won't sound right. But with attention, with patience, you adjust, you align, and eventually the music returns. Your vibration is that instrument. When your inner state is in tune with peace, joy, gratitude, or love, you don't have to scream to be heard. The energy does the speaking for you. Most people live backwards. They wait for life to give them a reason to feel good. A job offer, a compliment, a sign from the outside world. But this is like standing in front of a fireplace and demanding warmth before adding any wood. The universe doesn't respond to demands. It responds to alignment. So instead of saying, I want to be happy in the smallest way you can manage. Instead of saying, I want peace, breathe peacefully, move gently, think with calm intention. Let your actions become an extension of the vibration you wish to carry, even if you're hurting, even if everything feels off. You don't wait for alignment to come to you. You generate it through choice, through movement, through presence. You shift your focus from the problem to the possibility. You stop feeding energy into the stories that drain you and start fueling the states that lift you. You begin to treat your vibration like a sacred signal, because it is. Every moment you spend feeling low and doing nothing about it You're teaching life how to respond to you. Not in punishment, but in reflection. That's why small shifts matter. A deep breath, a short walk, a gentle smile, a moment of stillness. These are not meaningless. They are recalibrations. They're signals to the universe that say, I am rising. Even if you're still hurting. Even if you're still figuring it out. People think manifestation is magic. It's not. It's emotional alignment. It's becoming a match for the life you want. Not in theory, but in being. You don't attract what you desire, you attract what you are. And if you want a life filled with peace, love, and joy, then your job is to carry those emotions before they arrive. That's what creates the invitation. That's what opens the door. When life feels heavy and your words feel hollow, don't just say something different. Feel something different. Choose something different. Force a laugh. Hum a song. Sit under the sky and let the light touch your skin. These may seem small, but vibration doesn't need drama, it needs consistency. And every choice to raise your state, even by a fraction, is a signal the universe understands. Because in the end, it's not about what you say, it's about what you carry. And when you carry joy, even imperfectly, the world can't help but reflect it. Pain may be involuntary, but suffering is often a choice. This is one of those truths that people struggle to accept, not because it's cruel, but because it's confronting. You see, pain is part of life. You don't get to avoid it. Hearts break, dreams fail, people leave, health declines, the world disappoints. Pain arrives without invitation, unannounced and unstoppable. You can't block it, and you shouldn't. Pain is a messenger. It shows you where something needs attention, care, transformation. But suffering, that's different. Suffering is what happens after the pain. When you hold on to it, feed it, replay it, build stories around it, and identify with it so deeply that it becomes part of who you think you are. Suffering is when pain ends, but you keep it alive in your thoughts. It's when you nurse the wound long after it stopped bleeding. It's when you replay what they said, how they hurt you, how life didn't go your way, over and over again, as if keeping it on repeat will somehow resolve it. But it doesn't. All it does is solidify your connection to it, keeping you emotionally trapped. And this is where choice comes in. You can't choose what hurts you, but you can choose what you do with that hurt. You can choose whether to carry it forward or set it down. You can choose whether to live in that moment or step out of it and reclaim your presence. That's why forcing happiness, especially in the aftermath of pain, is not avoidance, it's liberation. It's the conscious decision to stop letting suffering run the show. It's important to understand that choosing happiness doesn't mean denying what happened. It doesn't mean pretending the betrayal didn't sting or the loss didn't matter. It means choosing to stop reliving it. It means acknowledging the pain fully and then choosing to live beyond it. You see, your mind is like a projector. It keeps casting images of what happened, what should have happened, what you wish you could change. But that film only runs if you let it. You have the power to turn it off. And when you do, you create space. Space for healing, space for peace, space for something better to come in. It takes courage to stop suffering. Strange, isn't it? Because we think it would be easy to let go of pain, but it's not. Many people cling to suffering because it's familiar. because it gives them a story, because it justifies their fear or anger. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, what is this costing me? You are not here to relive your pain. You are here to transcend it. And you do that by choosing joy, even when it feels unearned, even when it feels awkward. You smile not because you're healed, but because you've decided to move toward healing. You laugh not because you have nothing to cry about, but because you've decided not to drown in it anymore. That is your power. That is your choice. When you begin to see suffering as optional, you start reclaiming your freedom. You start noticing how often you unconsciously choose to stay stuck, and from that awareness, you can begin choosing differently. You start catching the thought spirals, the inner narratives, the emotional traps, and instead of going deeper into them, you pause, you breathe, you redirect, you move. Happiness becomes your rebellion, your refusal to live in a state of prolonged sadness. It becomes an act of radical self-care, not the soft, pampering kind, but the fierce kind that says, I will no longer betray myself. By choosing pain, I no longer need to carry. And you don't need to do it all at once. You don't need to be joyful all the time. You just need to be willing to interrupt your suffering, willing to create small moments of joy, even if they feel brief or artificial. Because every time you do, you loosen the grip of suffering, you create distance, and in that space you rediscover yourself. Not the version bound by pain, but the one that exists beyond it. To let the pain come, let it teach you, but then let it leave. And when it tries to stay longer than it's meant to, choose happiness. Not because everything is right, but because you refuse to live in a story that keeps you small. Every heavy season has a secret gift, but only the joyful heart can see it. Life, in its raw and unpredictable way, often wraps its greatest wisdom in discomfort. Pain, confusion, isolation, and struggle aren't just random punishments from a cruel universe. They are invitations, subtle, often unrecognizable in the moment, for transformation. But the challenge is this: when you are buried beneath the weight of it all, it's nearly impossible to see the lesson. You become so absorbed in surviving that you forget to observe. And this is where joy plays its most powerful role, not as denial, but as vision. When you carry even a small amount of joy in your heart during dark times, you gain access to a different kind of sight. You start to look through the pain, not just at it. You begin to notice small patterns, quiet opportunities, and gentle shifts that would otherwise be invisible. Joy becomes the light that makes the hidden paths appear. Without it, you're stumbling in shadows. With it, you begin to see meaning. It's a common misunderstanding that joy must come after clarity, that you must first understand why something painful is happening before you allow yourself to feel good again. But the truth is the opposite. The pleasure is in the unpleasant. Often, you must choose joy before the clarity arrives. You must lift your state, not because the situation has changed, but so you can begin to see it differently. That change in perception is what reveals the gift within the season, because the gift is never found in the external outcome. It's not the promotion you finally got, or the relationship that returned, or the apology that came years later. The real gift is who you became in the process, the inner strength you unearthed, the resilience you didn't know you had, the boundaries you built, the parts of yourself you discovered while you were alone, hurting and trying to heal. But to notice these treasures, you need emotional space, and that's what joy gives you. Even the smallest flicker of joy acts like a crack in the wall of heaviness. It lets light in. It lets air in. It creates movement where there was only stuckness. That movement allows you to rise above the narrative of suffering long enough to ask, what is this teaching me? What is life trying to show me? When you carry sorrow alone, you are blind to the horizon. You live in tunnel vision, only able to see the loss, the failure, the heartbreak. But when you allow joy to coexist with sorrow, even briefly, you gain range. You can zoom out. You can witness the full landscape of your experience. And it's only then that the hidden meaning begins to emerge. Think of the most difficult times in your life. Now, ask yourself, didn't something about you change because of it? Didn't it carve something into your character that ease and comfort never could? That's the gift. But you couldn't see it when you were immersed in pain. You could only see it after you stepped back, shifted your state, and began to observe from a place of light. This is why forcing yourself to be happy, even when life feels unbearably heavy, is not self-deception, it's self-reclamation. It's the choice to rise above the surface pain long enough to glimpse the deeper message. Joy doesn't erase the hard season. It gives you eyes to recognize what that season came to teach. And no, the gift doesn't always justify the pain. Life is not always fair, and some wounds leave permanent marks. But there's a quiet power in knowing that even within the unfairness, you grew. Even within the silence, you discovered something sacred. Even within the heaviness, you remembered that you are not the weight. You are the one lifting it. So carry joy like a lantern, not to blind yourself, but to see more clearly. Carry it like a compass, not to escape, but to navigate. Because when you do, the very season you once thought was breaking you becomes the one that rebuilt you in ways you never expected. That's the hidden gift. But only the joyful heart can see it. When life feels unbearably heavy, when your heart is clouded and your mind drifts toward darkness, remember this: you are not powerless. You are not trapped. You are not at the mercy of your emotions. Yes, pain is real. Yes, sadness comes uninvited. But what you choose in those moments, that's where your true power lies. Happiness is not a reward you wait for. It's a responsibility you rise to. It's not always natural, but it is always possible. By forcing yourself to smile, to move, to laugh, to breathe with presence, you interrupt the cycle of suffering. You train your mind to reach for higher ground. You shift your vibration from despair to strength. You become the awareness behind the feeling, not the feeling itself. And from that stillness, that clarity, you begin to see this heavy season is not here to break you. It's here to awaken you. Every act of chosen joy is a signal to life that you are ready, not just to survive, but to transform. Not just to endure the pain, but to extract its wisdom. You force happiness, not to fake anything, but to remember everything. That you are light in a world of shadow, and that your spirit, even when shaken, is never truly defeated. So rise, smile even when it hurts, laugh even when you're unsure, move forward even when you're afraid, because joy is not what comes after you heal. Joy is what heals you.